just want to introduce myself. I see, I'm looking at the attendees and I see a couple people that are logged in like multiple times. So if anyone's sharing their link or something, you want to make sure that your name is showing on there, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to give you credit. So make sure your name is in there properly. And I just wanted to remind everyone that obviously door knocking and marketing and prospecting is what we want to be doing right now. If you are looking for a way to do that more effectively, we have an amazing tool that can really help you narrow down who you should be targeting and who you should be touching. It's a free program. If you want to know more, reach out to me or your favorite sales exec at Fidelity, and we would love to sit down and show you how it all works. I think that, oh, and then I just want to remind everyone, it's about time to get going on our Thanksgiving marketing pieces. So now's the time to start planning. So again, reach out to me and I will help you do that. Take it away, Walt.
Perfect. Thanks, Tracy. So I just want to give a plug to Fidelity. So I'm so grateful for Tracy and Fidelity. It was, I don't know how many years ago now. We've been doing this for so many, since like 7, 8 years.
A long time.
A lot of years.
We're getting good at it.
I really wanted to give back. I wanted to give back to the community and really lead with education. And so really, Tracy has supported me in that, and Fidelity has, and I'm grateful for everybody in attendance. I would like to think it's all me, right? That you guys are coming specifically to see me, but I know that there's that CE portion. So that's very, very, important.
We don't even know if they're paying attention right now.
I know that. So, but at least I know they're logged in. So
they're all there with their pens and ready notes.
Exactly. So, perfect. All right. So I do see that there's one person logged in here with a phone number. So if you can email Tracy as to who you are, so you can get your CE credit, that would be perfect. Otherwise, you won't get your CE credit because we don't know who you are. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start on the slide. Again, I've designed this course really to bring value to you guys. Not only bring value to you guys in statistical data, but specifically bring value to you guys in a way in which we can create business today. I think that's really most important. I know that a lot of people are struggling right now, not only struggling financially, just the general public, but business-wise, a lot of pipelines are much, much smaller. I just got back from a sales conference, national sales conference, which I completely loved, and as I talk to other loan professionals throughout the U.S., everybody's pipelines are down. And as I talk to realtors consistently, I know your guys' pipelines are down. There's very few people that have larger pipelines than they did last year. So my intent is to be able to give you statistical data to be able to get over some of the commonly asked questions, and also to be able to give a way for you to be able to create 1 to 3 new transactions here literally in the next 2 weeks. So let me share my screen. We will rock and roll. All right. So you see the slides, Tracy? Yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. So creating certainty in an uncertain world. One thing that this just came out this morning. So this is the MOVE Index. Now the MOVE Index shows the volatility in the bond market. There's also another index called the VIX Index that shows the volatility in the stock market. So this one specifically is the MOVE Index, showing the volatility in the bond market. And you can see that there's been massive volatility in the bond market as of late. That's no news to anybody on this call, I don't think. Literally last week, as I was at this conference, we had major market movement. We were swaying. I mean, one day we swayed 150 basis points, which is a significant market movement. And let me put that in perspective for you. So if you talk to me the day before on a $100,000 loan, to keep the numbers just nice and easy, on a $100,000 loan, if we have 150 basis point movement in the market, that means one of two things. One, either your rate's going to be significantly higher, or two, if we look at just specifically a fee, if your rate stays the same, it's going to cost you on a $100,000 loan an extra $1,500 to purchase that rate or to buy that rate down. So if you don't buy that rate down, then you're going to have to increase the rate to cover that $1,500. Remember that when we get rates, and I'm asked consistently, what's your rate, from realtors all the time and from clients. And that's the question that, everybody always asks, right? We're always trained to ask that question. But remember that we don't get a rate. Lenders don't get just one rate. There is no just one rate. There's a variation of that rate, and we get a rate stack. So my rate stack could be anywhere on any given loan from 3.5% to 7%. So what rate do you want? And in there, there's going to be a bunch of buy down, so you have to buy that rate down. And then there's going to be a little more of a close to maybe a par pricing, which means there's no buy down and we're not paying you anything. But also in this market, one thing that we might want to look at is maybe going a little bit further if there's room, if there's possibility in there to be able to go a little bit further. And instead of having maybe a par rate where we don't pay you anything and you're not buying the rate down, maybe go a little bit further, maybe an extra 0.75% in interest rate if the client can do that. And maybe we pay for some of the closing costs. So that's there from time to time. That's kind of lending 2.0 or 3.0, but we can talk about that at a later date. Now, ultimately, when we look at the bond market, we look at the volatility that we've had literally since, just as of short here, since August. We've had massive volatility in the bond market, equal to that at the start of COVID. Now, if you remember at the start of COVID, you probably heard a lot of lenders. I was trying to step out and be very vocal about this with all of our realtor partners and with really anybody that would listen. And we talked about the volatility in the bond market at that time. When COVID broke out, all of a sudden there was massive uncertainty in the stock market. And at that time, stock market fell. One thing that you may not have heard is that this was the start of the bailout programs. So there was a $1 trillion bailout that happened with the banks at the start of COVID. And what happened with that is that as the stock market fell, there were stock traders that had purchased stocks on margin, a lot of stocks on margin. And they started to have margin calls as stocks were selling off. Well, as they had margin calls, they would go to the banks and say, hey, we need our money. We need to pay our margin calls. And the banks are saying, we don't have your money in the bank, I'm sorry. So they weren't liquid. So the Fed had to step in at the start of COVID, and it was a $1 trillion, I'm calling it a bank bailout. It was a $1 trillion bank bailout that then they were able to infuse the cash to the banks, which then allowed the stock traders to be able to pull their money out and then pay for those margin calls. Well, at that time, again, there was massive uncertainty in the stock market and the bond market. We had some days where, you would talk to us in the morning and, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here. You would talk to us in the morning and the rate would be, let's call it 3.5%. You talk to us in the afternoon and the rate would be 4.75%. So only time that we've had massive movement was at that time compared to now. Now we're seeing massive volatility. So in fact, when we look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is known as a riskier investment. It's known as something that has a lot of volatility. You will see that we've had more volatility in the bond market, which is supposed to be pretty calm, pretty collected, than we have in the Bitcoin market. So we had some volatility here that it increased and then kind of stayed the same for a while. So the reason why I share that is because we are in uncertain times. We're in extremely uncertain times. The news media is all over with all these headlines. And remember that the news media is there to sell airtime. That's their main purpose. Mark Zuckerberg was interviewed with Senator Orrin Hatch, and specifically Senator Hatch had asked him, how do you make money? And he was talking about Facebook and how Facebook made money. And he kind of drilled Mark multiple times. And Mark finally just said, Senator, we sell advertisements. That's what we do. And that's really what the media is doing. They are selling advertisements. So as we look here, Mark Fleming, he's the chief economist, he had said, when the economic uncertainty dust settles, those buyers and sellers who are on the sideline will jump back in to the housing game. Demographic trends support elevated purchase demand in the years to come. So it's a question of when, not if, for the housing market. Now, we know that the housing market is going to be steady. It's going to be steady. We know that, and I'm going to talk about this here in a little bit, that really real estate is a supply and demand issue. It's a supply and demand game, if you will. And so it's really helping our clients understand that. It's not a matter of if with the housing market, if values are going to decrease a little bit or increase. It's just a matter of when. We all need shelter. And so do we rent or do we buy? Buying acts as a hedge against inflation, and we're in highly inflationary times right now. We are moving to a recession if we're not already in a recession. Most likely we're already in a recession. Our elected officials keep changing the definition of a recession. And so, but technically the old definition, we're in a recession now. However, with their new definition of a recession, we're most likely in that recession here real soon. We know that interest rates really have doubled just over the last, 11, 10 months, 9 months in there. And so that has really put a damper on housing. However, it's created a massive opportunity. And that's where I'll talk about being able to create 1 to 3 transactions here in the next 2 weeks, is the opportunity that the doubling of the interest rates have created. I just received a text from a friend of mine who is building a house in Arizona. He's a past client of mine, building a house in Arizona, has his house listed right now, just reduced the price by $10,000. And he's saying, hey, I think I might just rent for the next year or 2 years. Let all this kind of go through, let rates come back down. He's an accountant, so he understands the market a little bit. Rates come back down, and at that time, people are going to flood the market again, and it's going to drive my price up a little bit. So maybe I'll do that. That's what some of our sellers are looking at right now. They're looking at, and they may be missing some of the opportunity that is out there right now. And I think that there's massive opportunity. I'm speaking to the choir here, but I think there's massive opportunity that is out in this market right now. One thing that that the seminar that I went to had mentioned is this was a mortgage event called Sales Mastery. It's put on by Todd Duncan. Todd's a friend of mine and has been a mentor of mine for years. And Todd started business in 1981. Now, 1981, you might remember, there was a major recession. So he wore a pin, and I don't know if this will show up or not. Let me see if it will. Boom. Rumor is we're in a recession. I'm not participating. So when a recession hits, there's a lot of negativity that hits the market. And sometimes the markets are going to be much more difficult. Todd, between 1981 and 1992, was able to close 6,000 transactions during that period of time. This is down in California. There were a lot of people that struggled during that period of time. Todd was able to close 6,000 transactions. So he found opportunity in the midst of a recession. Now, a nice thing about a recession in our industry is that, and it took a while for 1981 to happen, but what will happen in our recession is that rates are going to come down, and they're going to come down relatively quickly from what it looks like. So here, the KPMG CEO, he said that global CEOs see a mild and short recession, yet optimistic about global economy over a 3-year horizon. More than 8 out of 10 anticipate a recession over the next 12 months, with more than half expecting it to be mild and short. Whether it's mild or short, it doesn't matter. Whether it's a soft landing, a hard landing, those are all things that will affect really the cost of goods and services. Those are the things that are going to affect families. For us in the industry, whether it's a hard landing, a soft landing, a short recession or whatever, rates are going to go down. And I'm going to show you that. So a recession means falling mortgage rates. In 1980, rates went down by more than 4.25% in 1980. In 1981, they went down by 5%. Now, those are big market movements. And of course, rates at that time, were 17, 18, 19%. We've all heard those stories. So for rates to come down 5%, that's a pretty significant movement there. And this was Keeping Current Matters here that had this data. In 1991, rates went down by 2.25%. 1991 was a good year. I didn't know we were in a recession. That's the year I graduated. So, but anyway, in 2001, I sidetracked there, sorry. In 2001, rates decreased by 0.5% during that recession. In 2008, rates decreased by 1.125%. Now, anytime that we talk about a recession, when we talk about housing and that, everybody's looking at 2008 because that's really the last one that we remember. However, because it wasn't very vocal in 2020, we were in a recession at that time, right before COVID, and rates went down by 1 percentage point. So 2008 was a horror story. It was, I know myself, I was telling somebody just earlier today, I tried to get out of the business in 2008, but it sucked me back in. And I'm glad that I didn't leave the industry because 2008 taught me a lot. It taught me a lot. It taught me that it's best and I need to help our clients get out of debt. So if I'm getting them in debt, then I need to help them get out of debt as quickly as they possibly can. And I need to teach them principles to be able to do so. So hence we do that. It taught me that really cash is king. So you want to make sure that you've got 3 to 6 months worth of reserves in your account. So if you're all of a sudden out of a job or something, then it's okay. It taught me a lot about housing. It taught me a lot about economics and that. So during that period of time, as it taught, valuable lessons, those were the times that we ended up growing, that we ended up, there were a lot of people that got out of the business at that time and that. So now 2008 is a 40-year market cycle. So it happens every 40 years. And that's something also to make sure that our clients understand is that 2008 happens every 40 years, that it's not slated to happen again for another 40 years past 2008. So it just happened to be the housing economy is what pushed us into that. So as we look at really a recession, here as we go all the way back to 1980, we can see that every time that the Fed has raised the Fed funds rate and we hit a recession, then rates fall. So again, we need to make sure that our clients understand this because the way in which they're structuring financing right now might not be the most wisest decision for them. So we need to help them through that process and educate them that literally every recession that we've had since 1980, that interest rates have gone down during those recessions. So now again, as we go all the way back to 1955, every recession that we've had 10 recessions since then. Again, as we look at every time the Fed has raised the Fed funds rate, every time we've had a recession. recessions lead to lower interest rates. And it's important to understand that. It's important to understand what they're doing. As the Fed is raising the Fed funds rate, and really, what is the Fed funds rate? Let me back up just a tiny bit. So what is the Fed funds rate? The Fed funds rate is simply the overnight cost of funds that 5 banks from the US can borrow money from the Fed. There's only 5 banks that can borrow money from the Fed. From there, then, all the other banks borrow money from those 5 banks. Now, it's the overnight cost of funds that the Fed charges banks, in essence, let's just say. Mortgages are not tied to the Fed funds rate. That's important to understand and make that distinction. Mortgages are not tied to the Fed funds rate. We're tied to the bond market. That's why I wanted to show you the volatility of the bond market. So as the Fed increases the Fed funds rate, they're trying to slow the economy down. Now, the Fed funds rate is tied to prime lending with the banks. That's going to be short-term lending. So that's going to be credit cards, auto loans, home equity lines of credit. It's going to be anything that's tied to a variable rate. If you look at your credit cards, your interest rates have all gone up as the Fed's been raising the Fed funds rate. They raised the Fed funds rate to slow spending down, to slow the economy down. Now, as they raise the Fed funds rate, that has a lagging effect upon the economy. So what they're doing right now, we really aren't going to see for 2, 3, 4 months. It could even be as much as 6 months. So the Fed has a tough job. And the fact that they raise the Fed funds rate so much and they slow the economy down so much that all of a sudden, when everything hits, they really kill the economy. Or do they go just enough and they're able to have a soft landing, if you will. But anytime they raise the Fed funds rate and they slow the economy down, they will push us into a recession. It's just a given at this point. So really, what are the experts saying at this point? What are they saying right now? Again, Mark had said, while the markets consider overvalued, may need to adjust the not so new reality of higher mortgage rates. Housing market fundamentals still support a moderation of annualized house price appreciation rather than a sharp decline. So he's not seeing a sharp decline. Why would our clients see sharp decline? Again, they're looking back at 2008. They're nervous about 2008. We're not at risk of a collapse. And this was John Paulson. And so he says, we're not at risk of a collapse today in the financial system like we were before. It's true, housing may be a little frothy. So housing prices may come down or they may plateau, but not at the extent it happened, reverting back to 2008. Now, he's a hedge fund manager that actually called 2008, called the crash of 2008. So I'd say he knows a little bit about the markets. I'd say he knows a heck of a lot more than I'd probably know about the market. So that's why I'm listening to him. If he's saying that we're not going to see massive price declines, we're not going to see 2008 again, then I'm good with that. Now, Daryl, the chief economist for Redfin, why aren't mortgage rates pushing home prices down faster? Look up homes for sale in your neighborhood. You probably see overpriced high-end homes, tear downs, and zero reasonably priced starter homes. Therefore, would need to be more supply than demand for prices to decline. Remember, real estate is a supply and demand issue. So we would need to see more supply than demand like we saw in 2008. Right now, we're seeing a heck of a lot more demand than there is supply. And it's just basic economics. However, again, our emotions come into play when real estate comes into play a lot of the times. Hence, we're looking back at 2008. We're remembering 2008 because it was the most significant time home values lost 19.5% across the nation. We had a lot of problems during 2008. So we're thinking back to 2008. We need to help clients understand, again, that was a market that happens every 40 years. And so it's not going to happen again. Here we're looking at, this was realtor.com. List prices are not in a free fall. Now, between 2017 and 2019 levels, home prices were reduced. There were some listings that were reduced by 18.7%. That was kind of the average. Right now, just last month, we saw 19.5%. We're not in a free fall. We're not seeing the, this is just average. I mean, this is, home prices across the nation. When you're looking at home prices in the system, I'm sorry, it was 18.7% of the listings that had a price reduction. I'm sorry, 18.7% of the listings had a price reduction, where right now, just last month, we saw 19.5% have a price reduction. So we're not seeing the big price reductions that we did. We're really in an average territory right now, pre-COVID. Again, as we look at supply and demand, this is a slide that I show all of my clients to help them understand that real estate is a supply and demand issue. And this was from Freddie Mac, directly from Freddie Mac. They said that housing starts, so brand new homes completed every year right now, is averaging about 1.3 million homes per year. Single family completions are about 1 million of those homes. Multifamily completions are around 300,000. So duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes are about 300,000. Now with that, I would say we probably need a little more multifamily, but we need a lot more construction, period. Right now, they can build about 1.3 million homes per year. That's it. There's about 100,000 homes that are destroyed every year. So there's total unit supply that really we have that hit the market are around 1.2 million homes per year. Now, that sounds like a great number, doesn't it? However, for the next 4 to 5 years, we've got the millennial population that are starting to create household formations. So they're starting to get married, they're starting to or they're just, they're living away from their mom and dad, whatever. They're needing a place to live. There's a household formation that's being created there. There's about 1.4 million of them every single year right now that need a place to stay. But yet we're only creating 1.3 million homes. So if we're not creating enough homes for these individuals, then we have a problem, a supply and demand issue. So apparent deficit right now is around 200,000 homes that are being created every single year. Freddie Mac said that there's a current shortage right now of about 3.8 million homes across the nation. So we're running a deficit of 200,000. That's going to go up to 4 million here before we know it, 4.2 million, 4.4 million over the next several years. I read an article not too long ago that that construction looks like the builders can start to get caught up in about 5 years from now, but it's going to take them a good 10 plus years to where they're actually caught up. So that's something to watch. And this slide really helps my clients understand, as I share this with them, that real estate is a supply and demand issue. It doesn't matter when you're buying. I mean, right now you're selling, last year you're selling high, buying high. Right now you're selling a little bit lower, buying a little bit lower. You have a little bit higher interest rate, but supply is, or real estate is a supply and demand issue. So if you want to take some pictures of that, I'll also send the slide deck as well. So that way you guys can have that. So Ralph, chief economist for Kukin, not sure how you pronounce that name. Anyway, asking price for the most common US homes fell by about 1,000 last week. So $1,000 last week, and is up 6.3% from a year earlier. Again, I mean, that's real significant. Even though we're down by 1,000, we're up 6.3% a year earlier. The claim that sellers are fire selling is either based on anecdotal or manipulated data. Again, the claim that sellers are fire selling is either based on anecdotal or manipulated data. Who manipulates data? The media. I want to make that very, very clear. The media manipulates data. And so they're trying to sell whatever collects the most airtime. And I will show that here in just a minute on CNBC. If you guys have been on my past classes, you've seen this as well. But there is manipulated data out there. As our analysts of listing data shows, nothing of the sort. So again, the claim that sellers are fire selling is either based on anecdotal or manipulated data, as our analyst of listing data shows nothing of the sort. There is not fire selling going on out there. We know that. Now, really, what are we looking at for 2023? So the economists that I listen to and that I watch are watching right now really 6 specific individuals. We're watching Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Mortgage Bankers Association, HPES, NAR, and then Zelman. Now, Zelman thinks that we're going to have about a 4% decrease of values. However, Fannie Mae thinks that we're going to have about a 4.4%. So as we look at the average here, looks like that really next year we're looking at around a 1.8% increase in values next year. It's not a decrease of values, that's an increase, 1.8 million increase. I do want to talk about a little bit about what Zillow found out. Now, Zillow, as they've looked at their different markets, and so an MSA for Zillow is just a specific region. They're saying that really out of 618 regions, if you will, MSAs, that there's going to be appreciation. Out of 257 MSAs, there could be a depreciation. Now, as you look at that, they're looking at there's only 4 areas that could see possibly a 5% depreciation, 3 to 5% depreciation. There's 26 areas supposedly, 1 to 3% depreciation, 118 areas. So 257 areas could see this depreciation. However, when you look at, again, the average forecast for everybody, we're looking at around 1.8%. Now, what will happen here in the Salem area? We know that everything is regional, right? One thing that I love about the Salem area is that it's the state capital. So we don't see the huge increases that maybe Portland saw or maybe Eugene saw. We saw awesome increases. But I think that really starts to insulate us from some of these things. So I don't see really a depreciation happening at all in our area. In fact, I see, I see more of an appreciation, probably somewhere in the 2 to 3% range, this next year, probably 2 to 3%. Now, Zillow, they also end up as, I'm sorry, it wasn't Zillow's, HPS, as they forecasted. They also found that there were some depreciation forecasts and some appreciation. What they do is that they survey economists throughout the nation. So I thought this was very interesting. As they surveyed economists throughout the nation, the majority of the economists all are looking at an appreciation. I mean, even some of them between a 5 to 10% appreciation, 20 of them, as we're looking at a 3 to 5%, and 28 of them, 17 of them are 1 to 3% appreciation, where we are seeing some people, some economists that are thinking either no change or a little bit of a depreciation. So I think it's important to share that with our clients, but again, go back to, look, real estate is a supply and demand game. And you have to have a shelter. So either buy now or buy later. But helping them understand that it's all about supply and demand, and helping them understand that really values they can't continue to go up as fast as they were. We had some anomaly years the last couple of years. We have to have some softening in the market. We have to have some moderation in the market to keep it stable. So I think that's important to understand. Now here, it's anticipated that, again, that we're seeing about a 9.75% appreciation for this year, average of this year. We've been seeing a lot of appreciation the last several months that have been upwards of 18, 19% on a monthly given time. So we're going to see some softening here, most likely as the numbers come out for October, November, December, an average of about 9.75, 10%, most likely. The economists are also calling for 2020 being in the ballpark of that 2.5 2.56% appreciation for 2023, 2.66% appreciation for 2024, 2025 about a 3.66, and then 2026 about 4%. Now, we had averaged previous to the last couple of years anywhere from a 3 to 4% appreciation rate in Salem. Some markets had seen 5 to 6%, but anytime that I ever worked numbers for clients, I was always talking around 4%. That is a stable, good appreciation, just a steady appreciation is really around that 4%. So I think that's where we're probably going to be heading towards over the next several years is getting back to really that more stabilized market. So really one thing I'd like to ask you guys is really what is your story? What are you telling clients right now? What are you hearing from clients right now? I'm finding as I talk to mortgage originators throughout the US, as I talk to realtors throughout the US, I really find a couple different types of people out there. I find some people that are just burying their head in the sand and saying this all will pass, this all will pass. And I find some that are really leading with statistical data. And that's what I'm hoping that I'm able to give to you guys is a format in which you can lead with statistical data. You can help your clients understand the statistical data behind purchasing a home right now. It's a great investment. It's not going to go backwards. We know that. But here I've given you some good statistical data to be able to help with that. And if you guys want to go through and maybe do some role play or something, my phone's always available for you. Always happy to go through some role play of what we talk to clients about. Now, here, one thing I wanted to bring this up to you is I said that the media has it wrong and that they manipulate data. This is CNBC. So this is our friend at CNBC, Diana Orlick. And I say our friend at CNBC because, well, I'm a little sarcastic at times. So Diana Orlick in 2015, she said, housing today, a bubble larger than 2006. If you saw that headline in 2015, would you listen? Of course, a lot of people listened. I will state that in 2018, 17, 18, I had a client that was listening that there was a bubble. I could not help him get off of that. He ended up receiving a gift from his parents of $40,000 to buy a house. He was only going to buy a house at $200,000 because he was convinced values were going to decline and that there was a bubble. Even though I tried and I asked him, where's he getting his data from and everything, he was convinced, and he was getting his data from his friends. Now, remember, we are the sum of the 5 people that we hang out with. So we're going to be listening and hearing the same things that the 5 people that we hang out with. So he was convinced there was a bubble. I couldn't get him off that. Now, a year later, he was trying to buy a house that ended up being around 220, 240 because values had started to increase. And he had spent his $40,000 that he got as a gift from his parents. But in 2015, Diana Orlick said, housing today, a bubble larger than 2006. Well, in 2015, we saw an appreciation rate across the nation of 5.1%. If you had purchased a $300,000 home, you would have lost $15,000 that year. 2016, we're in a new housing bubble. Again, would you listen to that? Of course you would. I mean, why wouldn't you? So there was 5.4% appreciation or $17,000 that you would have lost. And the house would have been worth $332,000. 2017, home ownership doesn't build wealth, study finds. What? Since when does home ownership not build wealth? And who's the crazy person that did a study that found that? So home ownership doesn't build wealth. Well, case in point, values went up that year 6.1%. And that $300,000 house, if you did not buy it in 2015, would be worth roughly $353,000, or the wealth that you'd created when you sell your house would have been roughly $53,000. But homeownership doesn't build wealth. 2018, it's better to rent than to buy in today's housing market. Okay, values went up 4.1%. The value now of that $300,000 house, because you did buy in 2015, is now worth $367,000. You've made $67,000. 2019, the housing market is about to shift in a bad way for buyers. Values went up 14%. Values were $382,000. December 2019, and I can't make this stuff up, guys. Next year will be hard on housing market, especially in these big cities. Values went up 16%. You would have lost $61,000 if you didn't own the home. And now that $300,000 house is worth $443,000. You would have made $143,000 at that point. 2021, housing boom is over as new home sales fall to pandemic levels. Values went up 18%. You'd have lost $80,000 total because you did buy the house. You made $223,000. If you listen to Diana Orlick, CNBC, you would have lost $223,000. So the media, and this is a slide that I love showing to my clients as well, because that's the stuff that they see on the media. It's just mind-boggling to me. So let me make sure that I'm answering any questions here. Info. Phone number. Do you have access to the need shortage stats for Salem? So I don't, or for Oregon, I don't. I just talk about the national stats. And so national stats are going to follow really a lot of the markets as well. The other thing, Angela, is it's a great opportunity for buyers right now. Buyers have more power in negotiating and that. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Is there a slide we're not seeing? Do you see the stats reading from? Okay. So, and the stats, they were in my PowerPoint. So I don't know why you didn't see them. So I'll send that out. Angie, thank you, Angie. So, okay. So I had asked a question. What is the one thing that I can share with you guys the most that could help you today? And so one person said, how to help sellers overcome the housing price point now. So I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about really helping buyers. As we go forth, one thing that I really love is we talked about in our mortgage event last week, and I've heard this comment multiple times now. But our database is really a data bank. So my question is are you keeping a database? It doesn't matter how your database is kept, whether it's you pay for Zillow leads, so it's kept in Zillow, whether it's in Excel, whether it's in Act, it's in whatever. I mean, Top Producer, whatever. Are you keeping a database? If you're not, then start keeping a database. It's extremely important. Have the discipline of keeping a database, because that database will become your data bank. In fact, I was coaching multiple different realtors several years ago, and they were in my office, and I asked each one of them, how much was their real estate practice worth? And one person said, well, it's worth around $3,000. And another person said, well, mine's worth like around $8,000. And another person said, well, mine's worth about $160,000. So I asked, well, why the disparity between, $3,000, $5,000, $8,000, whatever, and $160,000? And the person said, because of my database. I've got an extensive database. Now, when a lot of companies purchase, in fact, one thing I want to drive home with you guys is it's in there, you guys have seen Shark Tank, right? And Mr. Wonderful. So I forget Mr. Wonderful's name, but anyway, Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank. His son was working for Tesla, and his son came, out from wherever he was in the house, and we was talking to Mr. Wonderful, and he said, "Hey, Dad, do you own any Tesla?" And Mr. Wonderful said, "No, I don't own Tesla. I don't want to own an electrical car company." And then he said, "Dad, you don't understand Tesla." And he just and that was the end of the conversation. So he decided, okay, what is Tesla? Tesla is an information company. They're really not a company that creates cars. They do create cars, but they're collecting data. They're collecting information. So your database becomes a data bank. Case in point, how many buyers did you come in contact with over the last 2 years who had money for a down payment, but didn't have money for closing costs? That is your opportunity right now. Had you kept that data, and I'm praying that you have kept that data, that you have all the Post-it notes, or you have, however you kept your database over the last couple of years of all those buyers that couldn't buy. We keep a pretty extensive database. And so we've got all these buyers who did not buy. I also invested in Zillow with a couple agents last couple of years, and I just pulled out all of the borrowers, all the people in Zillow that did not buy it. We have 780 people that did not buy over the last couple of years. We're going to start to take those 780 and help them understand that they potentially can buy now. Now, here's a secret. Here's how you can create business in the next 14 days. And I'm telling you, this will work, guys. So if you have the average price right now, I'm seeing the average price reduction is around $10,000. Some I'm seeing at $50,000. Some I'm seeing, less. Saw one at 100,000 the other day, 150,000. Now, you take those people that could not buy. If they need money for closing costs, they probably need, $10,000 for closing costs. Well, just in the last 14 days, gang, just in the last 14 days, in this area right here, from Newburgh, Woodburn, Mount Angel, Sheridan, Grand Ronde, Dallas, going down to Corvallis, going over to Sweet Home, Mill City, just in this area, in the Mount Angel, Woodburn area, there were 52 homes in the last 14 days that had a price reduction. There was 186 homes that had a price reduction in Salem Kaiser. There was 23 homes that had a price reduction. So if those clients, let's say that they don't have money for a down payment, well, can we go USDA for those 23 homes that had a price reduction? Could we help that client get into a USDA where just 7, 8, 9 months ago, the seller wasn't willing to pay for any closing costs? So let's flip the script. Instead of that price reduction of 10,000, let's go back to that house. And if that house will substantiate the higher price, that $10,000, I'm sure you guys have already thought about this, but take your data bank, contact the people that didn't have money for closing costs, or in the outlying areas don't have money for a down payment. Let's look at USDA, let's look at closing costs, whatever it is. Let's then introduce them. And now their shopping list becomes maybe not all the other homes that are out there, possibly, but maybe not. Maybe they look at price reductions first. And they start going through those price reductions and saying, oh, this house was reduced by $10,000. I need roughly $10,000, $12,000 in closing costs. And so I can ask the seller, because you already know you can at least increase the price of the house, that $10,000, bring it back to the original list price. And the seller will pay that $10,000. And you know that because they just reduced the price by 10,000. So don't try to reduce the price by another 10,000. Then the sellers get all upset and listing agents get upset. So I think that this is a great way to be able to truly help buyers in this market right now and literally help. We've got 388 homes that now a person that couldn't get closing costs just 6 months ago. Now we have 388 homes that potentially, most of those, I would venture a guess, most of those would qualify to increase that price, and most of them could end up getting closing costs. So, that's really the way in which I look at being able to help clients right now, help buyers right now. If you kept that data bank, contact them, and let's look at ways to be able to help those buyers buy houses. So if you have any questions, reach out to me and I can talk to you further, more in depth on that. I want to talk to you a little bit about date the rate, marry the house, and divorce the rent. You've heard this going around for a little bit. I've done some educational videos on this, and I say that this is one of the most important things right now that we're talking to clients about. Date the rate, marry the house, and divorce the rent. Now, as we look at this, here's just a fictitious, what if scenario. Let's look at a seller buy down strategy. Now, you've also heard the term seller buy down strategies, right? Seller buy down strategy is nothing more than, it happened all the time back when I first started in 1998, all the way through 2003, 4, 5, where the seller pays either some of the closing costs for a buyer, buys down the interest rate, buys out the mortgage insurance. There's a lot of different ways that instead of reducing the price of the house, they can help a buyer. Now, as we look at this transaction here, a client that was approved at 450 can now buy a house at 482. Let's think outside the box for a minute. Can now buy a house at 482, increasing the purchase price by $32,000 if the seller was willing, instead of doing a $10,000 price reduction, did an $8,000 price reduction on this day and bought the interest rate down. So you can take, or buy out the mortgage insurance, whatever it is, the seller can end up doing that and helping clients qualify for more money. Now, I've started telling clients, again, date the rate, marry the house. Here, the client is going to end up saving roughly $500 and some odd a month when we go to refinance them in 6 to 12 to possibly 18 months from now. So date the rate, get the house that you want. There's less competition right now in the market, which is a lovely time to buy. Yeah, your rate's going to suck. It's going to suck. However, we are still below the national average for the last 30 years on interest rate. The national average is over 7%, around 7.75%. So we're below that. So make the payment for a little while. Now let me do this. I want to show you here as we look at this. Here's the actual TCA that I did on this. So the seller buy down here ended up going, let me see here. What did we do? Contributions. Seller paid $8,800 in contributions, helping the client to be able to qualify for $32,000 more. And what they did is we elected to buy out the mortgage insurance. Now, that saved the client $188 more per month, which again, if you take that $188 more per month, helps them qualify for $32,000 more in purchase price. So it's important. It's more important now than ever to look at strategy on mortgages than just what's your rate. What's your rate is the wrong question. What's your rate is an old question. It's the only one that we know to ask. But it's more important now than ever to be working with a mortgage strategist to be able to help clients get into homes. Because if this client was only set at 450, that's all they could buy. Now they can qualify for $32,000 more if the seller ended up paying $8,800 to buy out the mortgage insurance for this client. Now, again, when you're looking at refinancing in a year and a half, year and a half from now, whatever, now the client ends up saving roughly $568 per month. Now, let me share with you on that again, a mortgage strategist, as I am. If you were to take that $568 a month, and if you're able to refinance at 4.25%, that client can pay their house off in roughly 21 years if they accelerated the payment that way. Or they could take the 568, we can refer them to a financial planner, and that financial planner can then reinvest the money for them. And over a 30-year period of time, can end up having roughly $1.2 million in an account. So what's best for the client? What makes the most sense for the client? Here we're looking at rent. Now and I forget the company that does this, but I just heard this morning that the National Rent Survey came out, and a 1-bedroom rent, get this, 1-bedroom rent right now, 1-bedroom apartment rent is up to, the national average is $1,503 a month. Now, as clients say, I remember back when rates were 18, 19%. I remember back when I was paying $485 a month on rent when my wife and I got married in 1995. So rents have gone up some. They've gone up a lot. In fact, they're up 11% on average. A 2-bedroom apartment is, the national average is now $1,845. So that's gone up. Here in this area, we're seeing high rents as well. Now, this was just a divorce year rent. And so if you're paying $1,935 a month in rent, one thing that we want to pay attention to as a mortgage strategist is really the tax benefits of buying a house. So helping your clients understand the tax benefits of buying a house. And then also the principal paid to them, which is money back to the client, right? Back to your clients. So this helps clients to be able to get over that thing of maybe now's not the right time or whatnot. But here you're looking at just over a 60-month period of time. If you rent, you're gonna pay $123,000 in rent over that period of time. That's if it goes up by 3% per year, which rents are going up more than 3% per year. Here, you're going to pay $28,000 in principal. You're going to have a tax benefit of $28,000. And the total payments that you make over that 5-year period are going to be $208,000. So you're going to have a net of $151,000 back to you between tax benefits and principal paid in that. Seller buy down strategy, again, $146,000. Marry the house with a lower rate, $110,000. So total equity, you're looking at $175,000 in total equity, $188,000 or $199,000. Now, if you accelerate that mortgage, and this is the coolest thing here, if you go and accelerate that mortgage, again, you're saving $568 a month. If we refinance you, you're going to pay that mortgage off in 20.17 years. Or if you end up reinvesting that over a 30-year span, you can end up generating $1.2 million in your separate side account. So we go over those things with clients. I think, again, it's important now than ever to be reviewing these things and to be looking at these strategies instead of just a mortgage as a mortgage, but what can we do to help clients get into houses, maybe even qualify for more home, even in this market, than what they do, and help them to be able to purchase their home. Again, date the rate, marry the house, and divorce the rent. So,
and we're just about out of time. And I just want to remind everyone with what Walt's saying, like, we have some amazing CRM programs. So if you are looking for a CRM to turn your database into a data bank, which is what you really, really need to do, it'd be a great time to start working on that. Reach out to myself or one of our sales execs, and we can help you find the right fit for that for you.
No. So, and then Ron, let me just touch one base here on your question. So there's multiple different types of buy downs. There's one thing that's going on right now, which is called a 2-1 buy down. And so that's where you start the rate out a little bit lower and then it goes up. And so I think being clear and also understanding the loan officer understanding what you're talking about. So, but I would say that you got bum advice. Buy downs are not a scam. So, you know, that's you know, unfortunate because it was a loan officer that didn't really understand. And again, I'm happy to talk to you more about that. So anyway, thanks guys. Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome. Awesome. We had a great attendance. I'm super excited to see all of your names on here, and reach out to me if you need any help. Thank you. Thanks, Walt.
Yes.
And I'll be getting your CEs out as soon as I get the recording on this, and we'll get you guys copies of slides and everything else that you might want.
Have an awesome day.
All right. Bye.